Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 208, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, January 8th, 2024. It is always important to remember to have your settings correct when you are recording a podcast. And after an extended delay in shows, obviously I was not 100% back with it. I apologize that the last episode's audio wasn't up to snuff. I've done it a couple times in the past. There's just this one silly little setting I always have to set in this program that I use. Unfortunately, I just can't. It doesn't save. I have to do it every time. And of course, it slipped my mind on the last podcast. So instead of recording on this nice mic that I spent a good amount of money on, it was using my little MacBook microphone. So I don't think it was too bad, but not how we like it. So I apologize for that. Hope you had an amazing weekend. Nothing exciting to report here in Holy City Centerland as far as what I did this weekend. Definitely been watching some college basketball. UConn Huskies, my alma mater, both the men's and women's teams are ranked again this year and doing pretty well. The women had a little bit of a stumble early in the season. They're just struck by injuries, but they are doing well, back on track. Very much looking forward to that UConn South Carolina Gamecocks game later this year, I believe in February. It's in Columbia. I don't currently have plans to go. Maybe that'll change. We'll see. But definitely looking forward to that matchup, as I'm sure some of you are. I know there's lots of Gamecocks fans out there. But in any event, other than that, also the NFL wrapped up its regular season. The playoffs are underway. So any sports fans, I'm sure you're excited about that. Hopefully your team made it. Mine has been out of it for a little while. Well, officially out of it for just a couple of weeks, but we've known the Giants have been out of it for a while. Been a rough season. So been a lot of sports after the holiday, doing lots of work. And that's about it. Before we get into the news, quick reminder, of course, depending on when you're listening to this, if you are listening to this on Monday morning, don't forget that there is expected to be lots of traffic delays in the area, particularly on the peninsula, as there are two big political events going on this morning. Of course, the inauguration / swearing in of new Mayor William Cogswell, as well as some new Charleston City Council members. That'll be going on City Hall, as well as Washington Square Park. And then, of course, President Joe Biden will be visiting Mother Emanuel, who will be giving a speech. And so that expect tons of delays in that area, as well as I'm sure Secret Service will have all sorts of roadblocks and things set up for a list of road closures. You can go back to last week's episode. There's a link in the show notes with more info, of course. If you're listening to this after Monday morning, it's too late. Doesn't matter. I'll be sure to recap any big developments or major things that are mentioned at these two ceremonies. We're not expecting anything, out of the ordinary from either event. But if there's some news making outside of what we've already talked about, be sure to talk about it on Wednesday's podcast. Both events either were or are open to the public. The event at Mother Emanuel, they did announce that you could attend that event. However, registration is closed. They quote unquote sold out. It was free to attend. But the inauguration / swearing in ceremony for the mayor and city council members is open to the public as well. There'll be some space outside. And again, in Washington Square after, folks can go there as well for that celebration. So if you're listening to this in the morning, don't have anything else to do or can escape from work for a little bit, that might be something fun to go do. All right. So that is just a quick reminder. But let's get into the latest news, and I'm happy to share that I picked, there's a lot that's happened over the little mini break I had during Christmas and New Year. So there's a lot of different things I could talk about, but happy to report this is all fun stuff this episode. It's a Monday. Let's get this day going with some good news, fun stuff. So without any further ado, let's have some fun. First up, Best of Charleston 2024 nominations are now open. Of course, for those unfamiliar, the Charleston City paper every year it's been over 20 plus years now, I believe. I forget the first year they first did their Best of Charleston awards. They've had a couple different iterations of it, but over the last handful of years, there's a nomination period where you can go through just one category if you want to, or every single one, and there are hundreds, and choose your favorite Charleston businesses, people, politicians, restaurants, bars, stores. I mean, everything. It's crazy. So you nominate who you would like to see as a winner, or perhaps there's a category where, that some business always dominates, and you just want to make sure, like, your friend or a business that you like that doesn't tend to get much recognition, you nominate them, even though you might think a different one, a different entity is better or will likely win in the end. Because speaking from experience and also in conversations with people, yes, winning these awards are fun. They're great for businesses, to advertise and talk about. But even just being nominated raises the profile for a lot of these businesses. I remember the first time I was ever nominated for something. I didn't win that year, but was nominated. And I saw an increase when the issue came out with the list of nominations and when people could start voting. I saw an increase in website visits, follows on social media. So just having a name included as, one of the five, it's usually five nominated businesses or whatever it may be, can raise the profile of local businesses and can make a big difference. And I'm speaking on the opposite side of that coin as well. Before I did the site and even after, I'll learn about businesses that either, maybe I heard about once in passing, but this reminded me about them, or maybe I never heard of, because there's some pretty obscure categories and fields that I don't normally cover on the website. And then I'll go check them out. And so it does make a difference. So, please go do that. I know a lot of people think these awards are like rigged, or that you have to spend money. I've never had any advertising with the Charleston City paper, and I've won multiple awards over the last 10 years. And I've never once done any advertising with them. So, with that said, it does make a difference. So if you can put that cynicism aside, there's a lot of great businesses and people out there doing amazing things and could use your nominations. So selfishly, of course, I would love if you would vote for Holy City Center or this podcast, Holy City Center Radio, for any categories that you believe that they fit in. If you don't want to make that determination on your own, I can tell you the categories that I have been nominated in before. And then humbly request that if you feel like I deserve to be one of the top five, if not a winner in one of these categories, please include. So the ones that Holy City Center or the podcast or myself have been nominated for in the past. And when I say this, I don't mean just someone told me they nominated me. I mean, myself or Holy City Center actually was an official finalist in these categories. So the first five, I've actually won at least once in each of these categories. So I'd appreciate being nominated, and again, for best local website, best local Instagram, best local Twitter/X account, it's the same thing, best local podcast, and best local social media influencer. All of those categories, Holy City Center has won at least one time. Some been lucky enough to win multiple times. The only category that I've been nominated in for before but did not win is best Charlestonian. It's silly to me, I know, but I have been nominated, and I was so humble when that happened. Some of the other ones I kind of expected just based on, what I knew about other people in the area, like best local website. I'm like, well, there's not a ton of local websites. I was usually pretty confident, especially getting that nomination several times in a row. I'm like, yeah, that's not a surprise to see something like that. Still amazing, and so thankful that I get nominated, but most of those aren't really a big surprise. Podcast was a big surprise its first year, and then Best Charlestonian that year was a nice surprise. So those are the ones that people have deemed that Holy City Center was good enough to be a finalist in before. So those are some suggestions, but please nominate whoever you feel deserves it. And I know they will appreciate it as well as I appreciate anyone who does that. You just have to go to the Charleston City Paper's website to do the voting or the nominations at this point. Once they tally the nominations, they'll have the finalists later in the year for the final vote. I'll be sure to tell you about that, of course. If you need some more guidance, hit the link in the show notes. It'll get you right over to the City Paper's Best of Charleston nomination page that they have set up, as well as lists all the different categories I just mentioned. And a couple other plugs. Now that Holy City Center is officially part of a new company, I haven't talked about it too much, but we'll do a quick little primer here, even though we haven't done an official announcement. Since September, that is when I left my old job at MUSC and have been doing Holy City Center full time. But the part I haven't really talked about is Holy City Center is now part of a new parent company. It's a startup called My Local News. That is the main name of the company. Milo News for short. MYLO. Get it? Milo, My Local. Milo News is the name of like the parent company. Underneath that umbrella is Holy City Center, which covers Charleston and the Charleston area, of course. And then, in addition to that, there are two newspapers, little smaller newspapers set out on the islands. There was Island Eye News and the Island Connection. They still exist. They are still out in print. If you live in those communities, you're probably very familiar with them. They've always had a website as well associated with those two newspapers, but they have now been rebranded under this Milo company. They are now Milo News Low Country, or just Milo Low Country. If you go to MiloLowCountry.com, MYLO, and then lowcountry.com, you can see those redesigned sites with the new logo and everything. So they're basically Holy City Center's sibling site. So they could fit as well in several of those same categories, such as best local website. They could also be best local Instagram or Twitter, as they have those accounts just like Holy City Center does. I've also been under this new company. I am the digital content creator. So in addition to doing all of Holy City Center like I always have, I am also getting digital content together for the Milo Low Country site. We'll have more details on this company later, but the plan is to have other websites under the parent company covering different areas, whether it's around South Carolina or hopefully further out from that. But at the moment, we have the two websites as we've just been getting going at the end of this past year and really looking to ramp up this year. We'll talk about it more. But if you're familiar with those sites, and even if you're not, go check them out, and they could actually fit under any of those categories if you'd like to nominate them as well. In addition to that, this new company has a marketing wing called Milo Marketing, MYLO Marketing. And it would be great if you could nominate them for Best Marketing and PR Firm. I don't have as much to do with that side of things, but my coworker, actually a couple coworkers at this point, are doing a fantastic job with it. They offer marketing services for businesses and, just if you think about anyone who may need marketing or PR, they can handle it. They do all sorts of stuff. You can learn more about them at milonews.com. There's a whole rundown of what we're looking to do with the company. And also you can learn more about marketing if you're in the market for marketing services. But in any event, it'd be great if you could nominate Milo Marketing for Best Marketing and PR Firm. That'd be great as well. So I've talked a lot about Best of Charleston. I promise that's the longest I'll talk about it. I'm sure I will mention it in several episodes until final voting is done. And I appreciate you bearing with me on that. So let's move on from that and let's get into the rest of the news. Last week, the Citadel, in an announcement that they're doing with Southern Entertainment, announced that they will soon launch the Citadel Live Concert Series, which they say will bring internationally known musicians to Charleston and transform Johnson Hagood Stadium into one of the area's largest entertainment venues. Based on the seating, it would be the biggest venue as far as concerts are concerned downtown on the peninsula, as it does seat more than the Joe. And it's been a little bit, but the Joe has hosted concerts before. So the headline here basically is the Citadel, where they play football, Johnson Hagood Stadium. It's been open since 1948. They've had all sorts of renovations since then, of course. Recently, that includes major upgrades that added a state-of-the-art video board and sound system. They also put artificial turf down instead of going with traditional grass. And now they're saying, hey, with these upgrades and the fact that the stadium is used really only like 5 or 6 times a year for Citadel football games, and then maybe another 5 times for events. I know sometimes they host like the chili cook-off there for the Animal Society. There's been New Year's parties there before. Best of Charleston parties been held there before. But there's not a lot of events. And so they decided, hey, we could maybe turn this into a new concert venue. For those wondering, the stadium can currently seat more than 11,000 people. And the East Side Stands project, which is part of this whole thing, will add an additional 2,000 seats and concessions to the venue for some of these potential concerts. Now, that's the only real details we have at this point. The lineup for their first season has not been released, but they say it will be available in the coming weeks when tickets go on sale. So expect some announcements I would imagine, the near future about what type of musicians we're going to see. This first season should give us a pretty good idea of what they're aiming for as far as what type of acts, what type of musicians, what kind of level they are at nationally and what we can draw. It'll be interesting to see how it compares to a place like, say, the Credit One Stadium out on Daniel Island that's been pulling in some pretty good acts over the last few years. So stay tuned. It's exciting, though. It's a new venue. Who knows, how it will do or what types of acts will come here, but hopefully we'll get some good ones. I am all for more concert announcements and venues that can seat a good amount of people, especially on the peninsula, because there's not a lot of huge venues. So we can only draw certain types of musicians, which isn't a bad thing. There's some amazing acts that come through some of the smaller venues, but this just gives another option, for touring musicians and potentially maybe that next tier of musician that we don't always get downtown. For the 10th straight year, the Recovery Room is tops in the country as it relates to the sales of PBR cans. Yes, on Friday, the Recovery Room, that amazing downtown dive bar, announced that during 2023, it sold more cans of Pabst Blue Ribbon than any other bar in the country. This is the 10th straight year, as I said, that this King Street watering hole has earned this boozy recognition. On social media, they claimed that on December 1st, they were actually 583 cases behind a venue called Roberts of Nashville, in specifically the PBR 12-ounce case count. So this relates to PBR 12-ounce cans that were sold. So in terms of cases, with 1 month to go in the year, the Recovery Room was 583 cases behind another venue, but somehow the people of Charleston just rocked it out that last month and gave them the title for the 10th year in a row. That's wild to me that the venue was that far behind, and they just killed it in December. So yes, 10 years running, Recovery Room in downtown Charleston has sold more 12-ounce cans of Pabst Blue Ribbon than any venue, any bar in the country. That is wild. And lastly, on this good news episode, the Uptown Hospitality Group, who is behind popular concepts Uptown Social, Share House, and Bodega, announced last week the official name and a little bit of details of the venue that is taking over 45.5 Spring Street. That is the former home of Warehouse, which you may remember. It was a pretty popular spot downtown for, I think, 10 years, maybe on the dot, pretty much, if not close to 10 years, being on Spring Street. Uptown Hospitality Group ended up purchasing. Not going to lie, I forget if they purchased a property, if it's one of those where they took over the lease. So I don't know if they're actually the owners of the building. You know how these things can get confusing down there. But in some capacity, when Warehouse was on its way out, they're taking over this property in some fashion. It was unknown what the name of this place was going to be or what the vibe would be. So they have officially announced that the name of the venue will be called By the Way. And according to their Instagram posts, it's going to be a neighborhood tavern. They plan on having musicians playing there. They're saying their food will be, quote, elevated pub fare. Expect cocktails and beer, of course. It's being a neighborhood tavern, those things are a given. I'm sure there'll be wine as well. And that's about it as far as details. It's hard to read too much more into that. It's just, traditional. I can't tell you how many times I hear elevated pub fare or approachable cocktails and things like that in press releases. And, it begins to lose all meaning. And that can mean a lot of different things. So we don't exactly know all of the details, but that's what they've announced so far. They really have just been hitting it out of the park with every one of their concepts, starting with Uptown Social and then Share House and Bodega. I mean, every single one of them has been a hit downtown. They're packed often, especially on the weekends, so I would expect nothing less from this new venue. I'm excited to see what it turns into officially, but those are the details we have so far. I'll keep you up to date. Thanks for listening to this Monday episode of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you have an amazing week. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And a thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show as well. If you'd like to support this podcast, talked all about Best of Charleston at the top of the show, please nominate Holy City Center or Holy City Center Radio in whichever categories you see fit for that, and I appreciate it. You can also go to patreon.com/Holy City Center, which gives you some more options to support the website and the podcast. I will speak to you all on Wednesday. Hope you have a great couple of days here in Charleston. It's supposed to be some iffy weather, though, so stay dry out there. Stay safe if it takes a turn to be a little bit worse than they're thinking. But regardless, I will see you Wednesday. Until then, good night and good luck.